there. Are you presenting tonight, Abigail, or have you already presented?
I'm supposed to present tonight.
Okay, good. We will do that. There's something a couple of things I'm gonna get to first, because, well, actually.
Oh, while you're on there, I have a question, because Joanne and I were just talking about the schedule. That last bibliographic essay.
We're gonna talk about it
Okay,
today.
okay. Because the due date on the syllabus is different than the due date in the assignment.
Always keep it on the assignment. You just disregard the syllabus now, except for instructions.
Well, I wanted to make sure.
Yeah.
Okay.
I may or may not have made it.
Okay, Abigail, are you ready? Are you ready, Abigail? Because I've got it ready for you.
Basic question.
Yes, I recorded the audio on it.
Oh, okay, never mind.
So when I read something, I ask the basic question, why? Why did this person write about this topic? It's just something that fascinates me, so I wanted to inform you. MLA. When I was in high school, I didn't care for MLA. I thought if you got extra sources, that was just extra work you had to do. Of course, that was me being a lazy teenager. Obviously, with the passage of time and the increase of education, I've discovered that MLA is actually a friend. APA. I really don't care for APA. That remains to this day because it's so close to MLA and there's so many minute changes that I get confused and it just frustrates me. So that's just a personal thing. Bibliography and research methods. Our class on January 30th was very interesting and it really propelled this idea of creating a project based on sourcing. The patch writing and the plagiarism discussion just really got me thinking about the citation problem that students have and that some of us even still question. And that's just a meme I made about whether or not to choose MLA or APA and which one's better. I know I probably did it wrong, but I made it, so I'm kind of proud of it. All right, the research portion of it, which is integral to the creation of citations. Research papers are impartial. Is that fact or fiction? Most of us probably think it's fact because it's a research paper. It's compiled evidence. It's fiction, actually. Yes. Because even though you're compiling evidence, you are writing your own evaluation of it. A research paper is in the final analysis largely personal because the author continuously uses his or her own judgment to evaluate the evidence, deciding what is relevant and convincing. I quoted that from the chapter Writing a Research Paper, pages 298 to 299. Research is about gathering the evidence, and a research paper is about your understanding of that evidence. Sources, primary or secondary. There is a third option, tertiary, and I'm pretty sure there's all kinds of options past that. But what we look at when we research is whether a source is primary or secondary. Primary is the subject. Primary sources are unfiltered per se. They are the grittiest, most real version of the topic you will get. So, for example, I chose Ligeia by Edgar Allan Poe. I'm a huge Edgar Allan Poe fan. So I chose an example of his work. Now, let's say I wrote a paper on Ligeia. I would actually use Ligeia, and that would be a primary source. That seems pretty obvious to most people. Secondary are the accounts. Secondary sources are filtered, quote unquote. These types of sources provide opinions and or other sources of information. They present preformed ideas, such as journal articles like Poe's Ligeia and the English Romantics by Clark Griffith. If I chose to use that, it would be considered a secondary source because that's Clark Griffith's version of how Ligeia fits into the English Romantics. You can use Google Scholar, JSTOR, or the campus library for basic information on locating sources, basic source location, things like that. You can also use Reader's Guide to Literature, Reader's Guide to Periodical Literature, the Oxford Companion to ... which is just the basic first part of the name to any specific Oxford Companion book. There's African American literature, there's American literature, there's English literature. I'm pretty sure there's a book, an Oxford Companion book to any kind of culture you would want to read about. There's also Literary Research Guide, a guide to reference sources for the study of literatures in English and related topics, and a reference guide for English studies. Now, Reader's Guide, Literary Research Guide, and Reference Guide are older books, but they can provide suggestions for primary sources. So if you're tired of looking on Google Scholar, JSTOR, Campus Library, things like that, and getting the same sort of information, the same suggestions, you can look at some of these books or some books like these because they're just bibliographic books, which are just compiled resources. Primary sources. Primary sources are necessary. Research papers should always concern primary documents like short stories. They're about your evaluation. When you write the paper, you need the primary sources because you need to understand what your opinion is on that source. Secondary sources are second best. I like that alliteration. I thought that was handy. Secondary sources are researchers' communication with other researchers, with the scholarly community. Secondary sources are necessary either for additional support for the researcher's evaluation or as the foundation from which to establish an opinion. So they are important, but your papers shouldn't be secondary completely. So use them sparingly. There's only one thing worse than not being credited for your work: plagiarism. So that brings us to common knowledge. Should you cite common knowledge? Dictionary definitions. According to Webster, a novel is ... is weak for three main reasons. It's unnecessary. Nobody really needs to know the definition as it is. The important part, as Dr. Stewart has told us a few times, is our redefinition or our own definition of what something is, what a novel is for this example. It's uninteresting. Whenever you watch a movie or a TV show, some songs even, if you do the introduction in your recordings, when somebody stands up and says, hey, according to Webster, a marriage is, or love is, blah, 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 people tune out because it's uninteresting. Nobody really cares what the dictionary says. Part of it's because when you say dictionary definition, it's very dry and people just start tuning out from that. Otherwise, it's because they don't really care what the definition is. It's not about the definition. It's about your opinion or your evaluation of it. And number 3, it's unclear. There are many editions of Webster's and similar books, and there's an unclear understanding of which edition you're using. For example, if you use the word moot and you want to define that, you would have to specify which dictionary definition you used, which edition, because moot kind of changes definitions syntax-wise in the lexicon throughout the years. General facts. You really don't need to cite general facts because of one basic reason. For example, Scarlet Letter, if you want to talk about the original publication date of that novel, you don't need to cite that because there's so many sources you could get it from. If you cite one source, it's pretty much unnecessary. There's so many options. Also, Hamlet. If you're writing a paper about Hamlet and you're talking about how Hamlet is undecisive and he doesn't act on anything, that's basic knowledge. If you read the play, you should get that from Shakespeare's writing. You shouldn't have to cite somebody else saying that.
I need to stop it right there because I actually need to contradict some of that. Not everybody who reads Hamlet, who might write a research paper on it, knows that he's indecisive. They might just miss that entirely, that whole to be or not to be. That might just go right over their head. So something like that, depending on who you are and how you're writing, could be something. Now you could pull it from the source itself, Hamlet being a source, or being the source text, and you could say that without any problem that Hamlet has difficulty making any kind of decisions, as is indicated when he said holds. Is that one? No, when he says to be or not to be, that is the question, whether it is. So that's how you would operate on that. So you'd have to be careful. You just couldn't just say that he's indecisive. You'd have to give evidence of it from this, not necessarily from the scholarship. And we'll come back to primary sources, because I'm going to give you an example in a little bit where there is no primary source. So I'll continue here. Footnotes. Mm-hmm. Come on. What do I do?
Also,
Okay.
Hamlet. If you're writing a paper about Hamlet and you're talking about how Hamlet is undecisive and he doesn't act on anything, that's basic knowledge. If you read the play, you should get that from Shakespeare's writing. You shouldn't have to cite somebody else saying that. However,
And you probably address
if
it.
there is an argument of which the researcher is particularly fond, the author of the source may be credited. So if you like something that someone said while phrasing a sentence about Hamlet's indecisiveness and his inability to act.
Exactly,
You can cite that
Abigail.
source,
Thank
but
you.
You also have to write about what you think. Patch writing. As we all discussed in our research for search assignment number 2, patch writing is the inability of a writer to articulate his or her own idea about a topic, either from ignorance of understanding or ignorance of citation. It should be avoided in our setting, which is the university setting or the academic setting, given that we have agreed with the university's expectation of being well past the level of ignorance. So basically what I'm saying is we don't have any excuse to patch write. We should be able to form our own definitions and our own opinions without cobbling together a lazy version of somebody else's. Footnotes. I included this because it's included in the source I used, which is entitled A Short Guide to Write About Literature. And I thought it was interesting because I've never been told or taught footnotes. So I thought I would include it. Footnotes are explanatory notes. They're little notes at the bottom, which I'm sure you've seen in articles that you've read and things like that, but they're extra explanation. If you want to include something, but for instance, Dr. Stewart's reading over it and she says, this is unnecessary, this disrupts the conciseness of your paper, take it out. You could, if you desperately wanted to, put it as a footnote. It's also something that disrupts the flow. So if you want to add an extra piece of information and it doesn't really go with your paper, but you feel the reader would gain some extra insight because of it, you can make a footnote out of it. Footnotes include outside sources, such as vines and memes, like I use in my presentation. And they include background information. They also include the discouragement of APA and MLA. Neither major sourcing type once you use footnotes, because in my earlier example, I said Dr. Stewart might think it's not concise enough.
I love
That's basically
footnotes.
why they don't want you to use it. It's unnecessary. Internal parenthetical citations. That is a $5 term, as my dad likes to tell me. It's just your in-text citations. It's how do you in-text cite. So for us, we use author and page number. For my example, I'm using my source, a short guide to writing about literature, and that would mean that I would use the authors Barnett and Kane, and the page number, which for this example I use 311. You could also have no author available, so you just use the title of the work, and that would be italicized, of course, with the page number. And if you're using an internet source, you could either use the creator or author or the name of the website. And I know you all know this by now, but please don't use BuzzFeed. I only use it as an example. Placement. So where do you place your citations? That was one of the biggest problems for me on our first week, on our first 2 assignments, and in previous classes, because I would always forget whether you put it inside or outside the quotation marks or the period. So if you have quotations, you put it outside but before the period. So for this example, Wolf says that in The Struggling Moth, there was something marvelous as well as pathetic. You would put it before the period. If you don't have a quote, but you quote-unquote patchwrite, you put it in the same place. Wolf is quoted calling moths marvelous and pathetic.
So I have a question for you on that. So is marvelous and pathetic, are those Wolf's words?
Yes. That's what she
Okay,
quoted.
then you would put quotations marks around that. Wolf is quoted calling moths, quote, marvelous. Is that phrase marvelous, and is it all one phrase?
It's marvelous and pathetic.
Okay, so marvelous and pathetic would have quotation marks around it.
It would just have marvelous, quote unquote, and pathetic, quote unquote, right?
Right. Yeah.
Parenthetical citations. That is a $5 term, as my dad likes to tell me. It's just your in-text citations. It's how do you in-text cite.
Let's go to the next page.
So your works cited page. But first, do you choose MLA or APA?
MLA.
Well, it all depends on what you're writing and how you want to write it. So APA versus MLA. We're going to start with APA because alphabetically that's where it lands. It's from the American Psychological Association. It was created by them, for their own journal. And it goes for scientific papers, which is quantitative research. Anything with hard data, anything with experiments, or anything that you can pull numbers from would be considered an APA citation. Laboratory reports, my bad. Things that you can pull data from, experiments, case studies, things like that. Psychology and education are 2 of the fields that use APA, and social sciences as a whole use APA. Sociology is included in that. MLA was created by the Modern Language Association for the same reason APA was created by American Psychological Association. It was created for them, by them. It's used for literary research, so our section, humanities, digital humanities, English, history, things like that. Qualitative research. It's anything that you look for details in. We get our citations from books, anthologies, audiovisual, and multimedia. So we can get a citation from this PowerPoint in MLA, or we can get a source from a TV show in MLA, things like that. MLA or APA, which is which? I've talked to you about what they're from and what they're for, but what is really the difference between the two of them? Well, APA uses their section of citation as bibliography. That's what they entitled it. MLA calls it a works cited. They're the same basic thing, but they're titled differently because APA uses alphabetical and chronological. That means that, for example, I'm going to use Edgar Allan Poe again, and I'm going to use Ligeia and the Gold Bug. So alphabetical, they both be under P for Poe, and they'd both be in the same place because they're by Edgar Allan Poe. But chronologically, whichever one was written first goes first, and then the one that was written second goes second, versus MLA, which is alphabetical. So I don't know if it's the same thing off the top of my head, but Goldbug would go first and then Ligeia. For in-text citations for APA, they do the same basic thing as us. They do author and then page number, but they also put the year in between. So Barnett and Kane, 2006, page 311. For MLA, we just use authors and page numbers. These are my resources. If anyone's interested in trying to make your own meme, there's a meme generator from ImageFlip, ENG-flip.com. They have pre-made artwork that you can use. I just thought it was kind of fun. I also used what are those because in the beginning of my presentation for my question, what are those, I was going to say, what are those? But I thought that was very unprofessional, so I'm saving it. And then there's only one thing worse than a rapist. It sounds way worse than it is. Some of you may know what the reference to that is. It's from this series on YouTube called The Neighborhood Patrol. And it's kind of funny, but it's very outlandish. And then my works cited. I used Poe's Ligeia and the English Romantics as an example. I also used 2 chapters from the same book, A Short Guide to Writing About Literature, chapter Literary Research, Print and Electronic Sources, and the second chapter, Writing a Research Paper. Thank you for your time, and thank you for putting up with my crackly voice and the long, awkward pauses. I'm sorry about that.
You did great. How long did it take you to put that together?
It took me about 2 days put together all the separate hours, and then it took me about a day to get all the recording done because I just couldn't figure out how to do it at first.
Well, now you know how to do it.
Yeah.
Except if you don't do it for a while, then you'll forget all over again. That's me. Which is exactly what happens with using this what do we call it? D2L. So yeah. Anybody have any questions for Abigail?
Very thorough. I enjoyed that.
Yeah, so it was a really nice review of some of the things that we've gone over at this point, too. So this, okay, so I had you do a discussion board the week before, but Dr. Reed showed up. But we didn't get to talk about that because she was available, and everybody seemed to really have been happy to have her talking about the situations regarding plagiarism, patch writing, and we taught her something too about the generator, paraphrase generator. So this is what we've got coming. I'm going to talk about upcoming assignments. I'm going to ask about strategies. I've got a research scenario, I'm picking up a couple of observations from bib essays, the discussion board from before Dr. Reed and the discussion board during Dr. Reed. All right, so my question then for you, as you put this together, is what have been your strategies to avoid patch writing now that you're quite aware of it?
Don't look at the source text.
Hmm.
Just don't look at the source text when you're writing your thought. I mean, that's it. Now I'm hyper aware of it, right?
Mm-hmm. Over aware of it. Yeah.
Just
To almost to freak you out. Alicia, is that something that you said? I can't remember.
You said what?
About kind of paranoid about writing anything. Somebody said that, wrote that they're kind of paranoid about. Now that must have been online. They're kind of paranoid about writing anything because they're not sure.
just done now.
I realize now how, like, I never really thought of myself as having like an eidetic memory or anything like that, but I have found that like as I'm going through and like typing my paper or whatever, and I think that I'm being original, I'm like, oh, this is the perfect word. And then I go back and look at the original source text and it's there and I'm like, nah! And so I have to go back and change it. I'm like, of course it was the perfect word because they used it and I didn't realize that they had used it. So I've got to make sure after I've written it, go back and make sure that I didn't, just think that just popped in my head because I'm awesome. Like, and make sure I didn't like unintentionally.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, and there are going to be some phrases that are really catchy that just stick to your brain. And that can be a challenge. So then
Not waiting till the last minute too. Also,
not waiting to the last minute.
what? That's
Mhm.
I'm just saying, like, the tireder I got, the more I was
Oh,
inclined
yeah.
to do this. And so I was like, I had to like step away from it, like get some cold water or something, coffee, I don't know, like, and then come back and like go again. That's whenever I could tell whenever I was getting tired because it became harder to come up with my own words. So I would have to.
Without having to right click and hit synonym.
I do that all the time though, like just because
I do too,
I
but
know,
like,
but not with
to
the
avoid having to do it with the patch writing.
right, because that's totally what the generators do, right?
Yeah.
So I almost used understudy just for kicks.
Let's see if she's reading.
Like,
See if she's paying attention.
Oh,
no, it wouldn't have been for that. It would just been like a little Easter egg hidden in there for you.
that's funny.
I guess for me, the strategy is like finding my own voice. So I think that was something that I guess the more I wrote on this essay, the more important it was for me to know what's the true argument and analyzing and finding my voice and saying that, because and I think I referenced that in my papers about that skimming the surface. That's why we patch write, is because we're copying the structure, like we're not reading, so actually, like finding the meat of it and finding my voice was, I think, extremely useful to avoiding patch writing.
Yeah, it's really, really hard to paraphrase well. It's hard. And I know that because when I make up examples and go to books, then I'm working very triply hard to make sure that it's really clear that what I write is very, very different from what the text says. And by the way, what I do with books that I see online that don't let me actually copy and paste, I use what is it called? It's this, snip.
The snipping tool.
The snipping tool, and paste it into so when I'm making my notes about and drawing from my secondary sources or primary sources, I do the snippet and copy it in. So it turns out to be kind of like a card that I use. And then that's very helpful for me to go about my identifying some of the quotations I think I might want to use and putting them in like that, and then reworking them. And how about you?
Try to make it a habit to, if it's So for the bibliography, for the annotated stuff, is to take the quote that sums up something that I want to relate and then immediately say what I think it means after it.
Exactly.
If I can set it up before, that's better,
Yes.
but it doesn't always work. But afterwards, immediately then just say that again the way I would say it
Mhm.
right after I've cited it, so the two are next to each other.
It's perfect. Yeah. Yeah. Alice?
One thing that I did when I was taking notes is if there was a certain point I would want to remember, I would write like just one word about it, like 1 or 2 words. A lot of the sources that I found were talking about the students who are more likely to patch right are going to be male, they're going to be from this kind of family background. So I would just put like gender, background, and then like finish the whole article, go do something else entirely for like 20 or 30 minutes, and then come back and write it.
Mm-hmm. Let it sit. Yeah.
I just had to be very thorough in making sure that, not necessarily in my note taking, but in my going back to my sources, that I was really differentiating what they were saying to what I was saying, and then just keeping everything clear of each other.
Mm-hmm.
And so just very much more organized than usual in this writing process.
Yeah, it's pretty eye-opening. How about you, Mike? Do you have any strategies?
I don't know if it's a good one, but what I do is when I read through the articles in PDF, I highlight sections that stick out to me, and then I'll annotate them off to the side, the comments and my own questions, and then I'll work on those in my paper, and then I'll go back and make sure, okay, are these actually words that I can use,
Mm-hmm.
or is this one particular word stuck out to me? Like, can I use this? I remember putting it in my paper. Can I actually use this word? And I went back and that was the word that the author used.
Mhm.
So I tried to avoid that. I don't know if that's a good strategy.
Or you can use it and just put quotation marks, especially if it's a term that author has coined.
It wasn't in this case. But
Yeah,
I
okay.
think it's close to it.
Yeah, I getcha. Uh-huh.
I've heard for at least since the 7th edition MLA that specific paraphrases need to be cited.
I
And
do.
I don't understand.
Well,
To me, I think it would mean something maybe close, but then you would just put an in-text citation with a page number, but then it just looks like you forgot quotation marks somewhere. So
not necessarily. And what frequently happens is that kind of paraphrasing takes place over an area of 2 or 3 pages, say. And so when you're doing this paraphrase and you set it up with the author's name and you're not going to use quotation marks because you're not quoting specifically, I put sometimes a range of page numbers that it might encompass.
That way they know where to go find the
Exactly.
original source material.
Exactly. Or just to be on the safe side, I quote one word.
Because like if I pull an idea from somewhere and I know that it's super close from what they've said, then I will just tag an in-text citation in there.
I would rather be safe.
That's what I started doing.
That's what I do.
Yeah, I don't usually have any question about that.
I've been too afraid to do it without, like you said, one word or a part
But-
of a sentence just to anchor it to something. Otherwise, to me, if I were reading that, I would say, well, where are the quotation marks? Like, where's the page number at the end? Where did you take specific words from?
Mm-hmm.
So it's not, yeah, and it's not necessarily words, but it's an idea,
Right. It's
Like,
kind of just
That would
letting
be
them know.
clear. Okay.
Yeah.
right?
But it's always handy to use just that one word. Pick out a special word that you just think is so nice.
And
It.
So specific. Well, you know,
it's in every paper.
perhaps.
All right. I'm setting up a research scenario, and Abigail, this is what I was talking about, not having a primary source. Here's the research scenario. I want to write an article about what our university calls dual modality. That is what we're doing here, where we've got this, we have people streaming in, it's available online, you get a recording from it. So here's what I want us to talk about for a minute. What questions do I need to ask, and how do I begin my research?
do other universities call it something different?
That's a good question. So we call it dual modality here, right?
Find your choice.
Precisely.
That was my first thing.
Precisely. Yeah, you got it.
What is a dual? Oh, look, dual modality drainage. I wonder what that is.
Dual modality imaging.
You don't want to know the answer. Safe search on. Safe search on.
So very clearly, there's something big about dual modality imaging. Now, how do I narrow this search down then?
Education?
I was gonna say TAMUC, like the university.
Classroom.
Okay, let's see. Classroom.
Because I know that, like in high school, like in secondary schools, we call it blended learning.
And I think that's what it used to be called here.
Actually, that's one of the terms. There's either fully online or there's blended.
Yeah,
You have
that's
one
what
section
it's
that's B,
called
like
here.
this one.
This one. So, and some of them come up hybrid, some come up blended, but dual modality, okay, so more on imaging for online models, teaching, and here's multiple modalities, which is actually more accurate for what we do.
Isn't that like different learning styles?
It is, but so is dual modality.
Yeah, but the word dual indicates just two, shouldn't it? And then so multiple would indicate that you're
More
using
than two?
more than, like, because you've got your fully online students, you've got your fully face-to-face class, and then you've got your ones in between. So
Mhm.
it's like very different learning systems.
Mm-hmm. So we need to rename it.
For sure,
Modality is
of
going to
language.
complicate it too, because the teaching articles are going to talk about styles and delivery methods. Showing a video versus reading a text, it's a dual modality lesson. So the word itself is going to complicate the search.
And here's one of mine that I did. I looked up syllabus. And guess who shows up? TAMUC. GEP dual modality. Learning that combines from the beginning two formative scenes, a school of primary education and the faculty of the education. This doesn't help. Combining theory and practice, integration of the learning realized, improving the professional skills. So I don't know what that means, but it's not what we do.
Right, it probably has many different meanings. So it's like, so what does dual modality mean for TAMUC? Like, in what regard are we discussing dual modality?
And this one has, this dual modalities here is verbal and, let's see, academic advising and higher education. What?
That's what instructors need. Intense.
Excuse me.
This is online, it looks like. Okay, so that doesn't really help me. So we do need to come up with a different term that is our term, and that way, to write this article, adds, it does something special. So we need to coin a term for it at some point.
Might it be a good option to start by differentiating the definition dual modality as used across fields, because semiotics have a different definition for it. humanities, sciences, computer science has a different definition for dual modalities when you're talking about how the different systems, what's the name? They have a name for it that refers to basically how search engines and humans interact, and that's a dual modality as well. So I don't know if it might be a good idea to start from there to stand out and say we're not referring to dual modality as used in these other disciplines.
Well, if dual, it doesn't reflect what we do. If dual can be no more than two.
I don't think, well, I don't know if that's the official definition, but that's how I think of it, as dual. Like, it's like one, I'd have to look it up.
Then we have to look it up.
About dual credit, then it's college credit and high school credit.
That's two.
It's
Dual
two.
And a
is generally
dual
two,
itself
but
is
the-
two people.
I think this does, though,
Yes.
depending on how you want to define it, this does fit the bill because
I'm new.
you're in person or you're online, right? There's two modes of learning in this class.
But
There's online or there's
but that's,
face, right?
this
In
is
person.
between being zooming in.
It's like a third platform of its own.
Because the experience for Abigail and anybody else who zooms in is different.
It's very
for them.
different.
It's online, but it's synchronous.
Yes.
Synchronous and
So we've got asynchronous and synchronous.
So then it's two.
Well,
If we want to stick with two, that's the way we can call it two things, because even though she's online, it's synchronous, it's at the same time as us. And then people who take it at a different time watch the video, that's asynchronous.
Okay, so here's how I might start it. That giving some background that our university started using the method, the delivery method that I'm going to be discussing. We called it dual modality. However, after some thought, decided that that's actually not as accurate as we want it to be. Thus, and explain what the problems with using that dual modality. And see, what we're doing here is we're not only claiming our own term, we're redefining what has previously, how we've thought about dual modality. And so and kind of a short history on it, a explanation of the trouble with using the term dual modality, and then be sure to find other terms that are also associated with this kind of learning platform, and which is going to take some serious work. Diving deep. Yes?
Mike mentioned blended learning. This isn't, although I used to do instructional design for training courses for software, and blended learning tends to be just exactly that, a blend of different types of instruction, right? That a single student is receiving. So in a blended learning class, I, as a student, might attend a course face-to-face, and then I might do some online courses that sort of reinforce something that I learned in that topic.
That's right.
Right, and then I might come back, or they might send me a survey or kind of touch base with me, and then I might go back to another course, take some online. That's kind of blended learning, means that you're learning through, you're experiencing all of the available modes.
So this says approach to education combines online educational materials and opportunities for interaction online with traditional place-based classroom methods. It requires the physical presence of both teacher and student with some elements of student control over time, place, path, or pace.
So yeah, I mean, you show up in a classroom, and then part of it could be online or something that you submit, or somebody reaches out to you in a different way. This, on the other hand, like Abigail has a distinct experience throughout the entire course, whereas I have a distinct experience throughout the entire course.
And Shay has experienced both. So tell us about some of the differences on that.
Well, I have to wear regular clothes when I come to class. Can't be
Get that in the paper. Get that in the paper.
much more comfortable to be in my PJs laying in bed watching you guys. It really is different, and even though you're there, like on Zoom, because John Lynn and I were talking about earlier, it's unless you've got a professor, and you do really well about this, that makes a point of including them, or if you notice that they're trying to speak, because there's usually a delay, a little bit of a delay. If you notice they're trying to speak, allowing them into the classroom instead of just forgetting that they're there. You do a really good job of incorporating them into the physical classroom.
It's hard for me to remember.
Right.
Yeah.
And not everybody's going to be able to remember to do that all the time, or just not have the knowledge base to do that. And we were discussing how it's difficult to really, like, I talk more in the class now that I'm here than I did last semester when I was on Zoom, just because it feels easier to interact. You get instant gratification, I guess, in so much as that you don't feel like you're interrupting somebody else because of your delay.
Right, we were talking about like if I would feel like if I was online, I would almost need a whiteboard, be like, me, I want to talk. Like I knew by the time I heard everything somebody said, and I had a thought that I wanted to share, someone else on the other end would probably already be talking by the time I spoke.
Mm-hmm.
And so, and like Southern manners, I don't want to interrupt them.
You must.
So I would,
Right, you really
I'm
have
gonna need
to,
a sign
like,
or
every time
something,
I have
like-
something to say, I would just have to be like, hey, go on.
Yeah, do something like, this, and then you all are also, you help me accomplish it because you say, she wants to say something.
But at the same time, one of the reasons I chose to do face-to-face this semester is because there's less distractions in the physical classroom than there is in my home. Like, I know y'all watched me last semester, good night kisses to my kids every weekend, every week, where my dog would jump up and be all up in my face, or my boyfriend would be like, hey, what are you doing? And it's like, I'm trying to learn. So not having that, distraction sometimes is handy. It all depends on how you know your limits and can handle the situation, so.
Mike, what were you going to say?
Well, one thing I was going to point out, this kind of format doesn't really scale great, because the more of us who have it here, less likely you're going to be paying attention to them. The more folks online or synchronous that you have, classroom management wise, it's much more challenging for the professor trying to juggle all that.
Yes.
So I mean, this size is probably about as good in class,
Yes.
and then you have 3 and sometimes 4 online.
That's dropped considerably.
That's about where it should be, because you get bigger beyond on either side, and that's really difficult to get any kind of meaningful interaction
Right.
because of all these.
I'd like to see what happens with like 6 people streaming in. Just as an experiment, just to see.
I'll stream.
Do what?
We'll stream it next week.
No.
Oh,
Can we reduce the number in this class?
I'm pretty sure I could give the Zoom number to a few of my friends.
Random people.
Right.
No recording. No recording.
That would be fun. Online classes that have had a physical presence, and if you could stream in, but there was no video. But we had a raise hand button, and you would click it on
that's
yours,
cool.
and it would just make a ding, and
Like
you didn't
Jeopardy.
know who did it. So you had to look and
Now,
see.
Zoom
and
does have
somebody-
that, at least when I was looking at it at one point, I saw something that seemed like that, and I didn't know what it was.
It should just make,
Abigail,
if it's similar programs to the Blackboard
Do you
we
have-
used, it should just make a ding or something.
Do you have a function on Zoom that you can like raise your hand or ring a bell or something to get our attention?
No, it's pretty much just, hey.
I have to look at it again, because there's a lot of little things. Because there's even a chat that, like, when you go into Zoom, there's a chat option too. You can talk to the other people that are on Zoom as well.
Yeah, and I know that people have done that.
right, because Kirsty was having problems with her video, but she was chatting with you to
Yeah.
try to, last
And then we
semester.
know that Charlie, is that his name?
Yes.
Charlie next door chatted into us.
Right, he can send us messages too, so.
Yeah. And so I need to be more aware of, I actually need to be on the other side at some point to look at the device, to see what we can do with it. Because then that's going to allow for, I think, more interaction. Now, I'm finding things out about this whole process. So we've got a definition, we got to determine that we are going to use blended, the term is going to be blended. And we'll define it as such. But then so what? I think this is an innovative approach. I think it is the direction that universities must go in order to attract students, in order to make learning possible for a broader range of students than we've ever
It
been able
makes
to.
it very accessible. And that's one of the reasons I chose to Zoom in last semester, because I didn't think I could handle doing the 2 courses given my own chronic illness in one go. And so it allowed me to still take the class, but do it on my own, time or control it myself essentially. Because you can even put Zoom on your phone, and so like you can go wherever. So don't drive and Zoom, but
No, do it. Don't do it.
But
I probably should put that warning up.
It's a dual Zoom.
I felt it was, whenever I discovered that that's because whenever I first started my graduate program, it was either online or face-to-face.
You didn't have any choice.
Right. And so in discovering that there was this third option now, I thought it was very enlightening. And it gave the student, because if you do just online, it's hard to really connect with A, your peers, and B, your professors, because I would just be emailing you back and forth. I wouldn't know what you look like unless I paid attention to the website. It would be difficult to meet for, a meeting if I am living 2 hours away. And this gives you an opportunity to really get face to face with your peer and your instructors.
Yeah. Yes. So we can assume that it does some things. It's going to allow more opportunities for more students.
Or is this an option for like undergraduate courses, or is this just like?
Not yet.
Okay. Do they plan on doing that? Like, is that like a?
I don't.
Yeah.
Too much work for undergrad.
I don't think that I could have handled it in undergrad.
Right. I don't think I would have. Well, I wouldn't have taken it as seriously as an undergrad. I would have just sloughed it off more.
I would take online classes seriously in general.
There's a
But
lot of.
if this would.
Go ahead.
No, you got this. You got this.
Golly. Go ahead.
No, I was basically done.
There's a lot of research and a concern about students online and retention rates, because it is so much easier, like in asynchronous format, especially for undergrads, they've tried to shy away, at least for freshmen, getting them enrolled. Now that hasn't, that's the principle. The reality is those sections always open up, but the attrition rates on those, the retention rates are really bad, because there's this assumption, both part of the student as well as a lot of times on the part of the professor, that an online format is going to be easier. It's going to be a cakewalk. And that's just not true. It's actually much more difficult.
Oh, yeah.
And so you have young freshmen who are coming in, and undergrads that are coming in with these expectations, and there's a lot more time management on them that they're not aware of,
They don't know how
which is more, I think is more difficult, and I think the research bears this out. It's much more difficult in an online format for time management than if you're showing up week after week. I know I got to be here at this specific time. This format kind of does a good thing about there's a synchronous aspect to it, so that's good. Whether or not that'll be good for the undergrads and freshmen,
I don't think if you want to complicate that, I've taken 2 online models. One has a weekly, and these were core American Lit, British, things that were required of everyone in the undergraduate program. And those had a week by week, like we have when we go to content and a little check mark when you're done. I've also taken and took as an undergraduate, it's due by the end. Here's the work.
Oh, man.
It's due by the end.
way.
that's just a
I'll
terrible.
take it.
That's just a terrible idea.
Oh, it's not, I mean, there's a schedule in the syllabus, but it's suggested, and it's due by the end. So a lot of
Even as a
people would wake
graduate,
up
I wouldn't do
in,
that.
when we end now, first week of May, first week of
March.
April. And then,
Suddenly remember they got.
I have a whole class I get to even look at. So.
That's kind of setting them up for failure.
Yeah.
I mean, but these were designed for people in active military deployments, people in, like, these were designed for people who can't do.
So they'd
week
be
by
able
week
to work
by
around
week.
their
A
own.
very
Yeah.
different
But
population.
they can't close them off. They can't
But-
say this is only for these
At the
people.
same time, though, it's because that's one of the reasons that I tend to shy away from online courses, because I know my own limitations. I know I'm going to be like, day before it's due, finally turning it in or just looking at it. And so coming to a class or having the ability to, be part of a class really gives me that accountability that I have to have this done and have to, because one of those, I'll just fight out of mind type of thing.
My first master's was entirely online. And that, like, I only had one professor who did a webinar once a week, but it was just her talking and showing us things, and we had to write a reflection on it, whether we watched it whenever she did it or whether we watched it later. And like we could pop in with questions, but there were like 80 of us in the class. And so there was no way that she'd get to all of us in the chat.
class?
Like,
How does that work for
We-
quality education breaks down?
you used a key word in there, but
This is
it was,
quantitative education.
well, I mean, but that one in particular anyway. But it was just I literally was a number, and because I kept plugging away and because I'm self-motivated, I was fine. And it was 1 week on, or it was 5 weeks on, 1 week off. So it was an advanced pace. I wasn't taking several courses at once. It was one course for 5 weeks, 1 week off, one course for 5 weeks, 1 week off for 12 months, straight through.
Holy crap.
It was, my hair was on fire. But because I'm highly motivated, I was fine.
Sure.
But if I would not have been highly motivated, that would have been a disaster of epic proportion.
Mm-hmm.
As a freshman, I'm a weird one. I would have probably been fine, but I'm not normal. Most people, most freshmen would not be able to handle something like that. And maybe because I was in college marching band, I would have been able to either, because that was its own bird.
Yeah, that's
But,
another hair on fire.
oh yeah. I live with my hair on fire, but
Well, online has no spontaneity whatsoever.
no, it's very rigid.
Yes, it is. So, I post a prompt and then students respond to it. And I can do all kinds of things to try to get them to interact with each other, saying in 2 days you have to have responded to 5 people, and it's just so contrived.
It's an endurance test, is what it felt like.
On that note, I'll say I did a lot after I did my core classes for my associate's degree. I did a lot of online stuff to kind of finish it out, the electives and things like that. And then my bachelor's degree here, I did a lot of online stuff. And the last class that we did, your last class from last semester, was the first time I've actually had discussions with you guys, on a discussion board. Out of all of those years of studying in online classes. I mean, I was posting on discussion boards and people would post in response to me, but we weren't actually talking.
Exactly.
Right?
It was
People were
oh,
kind of
very
it's
good point.
I have to post 3 responses, and they pick,
Yep.
the 3 easiest, or maybe not everybody picked the easiest ones, but they picked 3 or maybe they 4, to make it look a little bit better.
Oh,
I
I
think
thought you
that-
made a really great point, and then exactly what you just said.
Right,
Pretty much.
right. Exactly.
Well, see, I would always,
Paraphrasing.
I would pick the people that I liked, because I was like, you're an idiot. You're an idiot. You're oh, I like you. You're actually smart. So I would try to engage in discussions with them.
Don't get on a discussion board
No,
with Joe.
because elementary school teachers, they're not at the same level of English education as we are. And it just, I love them. I'm friends with some, but Lord in
Some of
heaven,
my best friends.
they
Well,
are.
it probably helped too that we were in class, and a lot of us, even though you were online too, Shay, we saw you face to face, and I felt like, we all kind of knew each other.
Mm-hmm.
And so we had a real conversation.
Yeah, so whenever I showed up in this
Discussions.
classroom, they're like, oh, it's you.
Yeah, that's
Yeah,
you.
live in person.
Do we have somebody coming in?
Oh, you're.
I think that's
I think
just
you're-
Zzz.
But no, I think you're right. It definitely matters. It's easier to have authentic conversation here than it is online.
It's not contrived.
Well, and even whenever we had
Even live
discussion
online
board
here.
posts about A Wrinkle in Time, because we weren't actually able to be here, I felt like those discussion board posts were more authentic and more
Yes, because
engaging.
Yeah.
you've
give each
already
other.
engaged with it.
Right, and I wasn't like talking to a tiny picture of a person, like, and because we already knew the personalities and stuff. And by the way, I responded to every single person, so it's not like I was marking anybody in the class an idiot.
Yeah, so did you even
Everybody in the
respond to
discussion board
any
post.
particular? Yeah.
On A Wrinkle in Time. I did. I responded to everyone.
Well,
So,
all the stuff. Like even coming from the online, there would be times where I couldn't find it. So I emailed Susan. I'd be like, I think I'm an idiot. Please tell me where the discussion post has gone off to.
It took me a while to figure all that out too.
So for this, would you specifically target like grad programs? Or are you saying like blended learning systems is what a push?
Grad programs, period.
well, it's getting to be a big push in high school because especially in my district, like we went one-to-one with iPads in the high schools and literally gave iPad Pros or whatever, like to 14 to 19-year-olds, every single one of them. And we did that for 2 years and tried to do this whole blended business. And then the district decided they were going to charge $25 for you to have the iPad, so they take a little bit better care of them. And so now none of them have them, so they're just sitting there in storage somewhere. But they still expect us to have a blended classroom, but now we no longer have the technology to blend. And so it's just become a vortex. Like we're all still trying to figure out, like, 'cause the kids engage better with the technology if you can keep them on topic.
Yes. On topic.
Huge if. But that's, and like, you know, they have all this research that says they learn better with technology, but the problem is the test is not on technology. And at least where I'm at, like, if they don't ever practice with paper, it doesn't matter if they know the skills or not, they're gonna like on the day of the test. So it's one of those conundrums.
Well, and see, and as all of you already know, I have other plans for this kind of mode, and it's in terms of building the graduate or master's program, and not necessarily building it, but connecting those students who take online courses all the time, to connect them to the students who are face to face in person. So. And that's beyond the classroom. By the way, did anybody try to Zoom in Friday?
I was going to, and then 15 students came in for tutorials, and I didn't figure you really wanted to see that.
I had my spawn here, so.
Well, I will say that it was not my deal. Sal was the one who did it. And so it was very different than kind of what I
Envisioned.
Yes. So we got to figure out, Sal and I have to figure out some things as to how that's going to work out. Next semester, I plan to take it all over. And I do want to ask right now, while I've got you, what do I want to ask? Oh, yeah. If I do something, sorry, you're doctoral, but you can play along. You can pretend you're masters. If we had a thing for first Monday, or not first Monday, but first Friday or something like that of the masters only, what kinds of things do you want to tackle on that?
Like topics?
Mm-hmm. Because
Variety.
even though I said there would be something for everybody last time, there wasn't.
Yeah, no,
It was all doctoral, and it was all
Linguistics.
academic job search. Well, the linguistics didn't make any difference. It's the
Right.
same thing.
But yeah, it was all doctoral stuff. I mean, I still gleaned information from it, so it wasn't a waste of time.
Yeah,
So I didn't feel one way or the other about it.
yeah. But so what would you like to talk about?
Stress management.
Stress management, all right.
Okay.
Okay.
Just
Yeah,
something I'm
no,
curious
that's valid.
I'm just saying,
Do
Is
what?
do you have a master's level assistantship program? Is that do you employ,
After 18 hours, they can teach in the classroom.
that might be something, I don't know how many know, I mean, I don't know.
I didn't know
do a
that until
master's
my
here.
friend got hired. And I was like, I'm at 18. And she was like, nobody told me that.
yeah, like how to get into that, what do we have to do, who do we need to approach, that would be very beneficial.
Because
Okay.
I've been asked by people in the computer science, people I know around from, that here I work here, that are in the master's program, that want to know if and I don't know what to tell them. I don't know if there's an equivalent program for masters,
Yeah, once you hit the 18 hours of English courses,
then it's okay.
then it's okay. But you can only teach English.
Right.
Yeah. This is, so I'm in the wrong degree if I want to go teach physics.
Exactly.
You're telling me I should go.
You should go, but they don't have one.
I gotta
Too
do
bad
all
for
of it.
you.
Yeah, start over,
Imagine
sorry.
that discovery? Wow. That'd be terrible.
I'm thinking something that will be relevant for everybody, all levels of grad students. And I'm thinking about it for the first session of the fall semester, is to do non-academic jobs. There's not going to be an academic job for everybody.
Right, because that's one thing that, when I got my bachelor's degree, I was like, what are you going to do with it? Teach? I'm like, well, number one, I don't know what I'm going to grow up to be yet. Number two, right, at the time I didn't want to teach, and so I floated along the last 10 years trying to just, find income, not really knowing what I would qualify to do at
That
this
would be a
point.
good thing.
So yeah, I'm thinking about that, that as a topic. And that'll give me this summer to prepare for it, to look at job ads and see what's going on. Yeah.
Kind of in the same vein, I feel a little embarrassed saying this, but like, I'm not really sure how to put together a CV.
Okay.
Exactly. I didn't even know what a CV was.
Well, if you're
confidence.
applying for an academic job, it's a CV. If you're applying for a public job, non-academic, it's a resume. And they're different things. They're ranked differently.
Curriculum good.
I didn't know.
Uh-huh. Okay. Mhm.
I've just heard people like, you want it to look good on your CV. I'm like, sure.
Okay.
Our first Friday, everybody was throwing around the CV, like, I'm just going, I am stupid.
I usually
Like,
write
no
things
idea
down
what
and
it
look
is.
up on Google later.
Yeah.
It would be cool if we could talk about like conferences, like getting involved in that.
That's something for everybody.
Yeah,
Mhm.
That's because a lot of students they're in degrees and don't realize, like, if you don't do conferences, you might as well not be in academia in a lot of ways. So just getting people involved in that, and talking to, only one of my professors since I've been in grad school has even talked about conferences, and that was Duchovny. Like, he pushes. You want to do one? No, I don't.
Leave me alone.
But that's what but a lot of a lot of professors don't really talk about that with students, and maybe they do. Maybe I just wasn't conference material. I don't know, but I think that's something that should be a conversation.
Yeah, in my
with your
class,
kids,
in my
with your students.
classes, students generally get that information.
The conference, I've never done a conference before, and when conferences are mentioned, for me, it always seems like a far away, something that I'm not ready to attain sort of thing yet, even though, there are undergrads who go to conferences all the time. But I guess personally, I feel like I'm not ready for that particular, I just don't know, I guess, what to expect.
So
Is it one of those things you're not ready until you are?
Maybe
Yeah.
like popular
Okay.
culture versus MLA, right? For a first conference, there are some that are much.
Do not go to MLA for your
For
first
one.
conference.
My little sister.
Noted.
Yeah, she was at Georgian Court, and she went and she got up there and she gave her, and she had things to say about the stupid questions. Now, she was good. She was a little trooper, but I don't recommend it
No,
for.
it's too much. There's too much anxiety at MLA.
Make sure you take
But to
Xanax
attend.
with you.
You can just attend.
Yeah, you
Yes.
can go.
Yes.
But you can't put it on your visa that you attended, right? I went to the conference.
I went.
Oh,
You gotta like do a thing while you're there.
Oh, I see.
Or
I
it
met
doesn't count.
people.
Maybe my experience was different, but I presented at the Southwestern Social Sciences Conference in October, And I was expecting like this room full of like hundreds of people who were going to be judging me. It was 12 people and 7 of them were from Commerce.
That's a good thing, though.
No,
That's
it
a
was
good
great.
experience. Right?
Yeah, and I had like given them my speech the night before in the hotel, so like it was like, I'm done.
So you were just practicing on them. You didn't know that they'd actually be there.
Yeah.
Okay, so that's good to know. That's very good to know, because
Because it just always seems so up here, and I'm just
Are
not
you not so
there yet.
qualified?
Yeah. Like I feel like I'm still down here at base camp.
But I think that's what we were talking about earlier, is like feeling kind of like a fraud, is that I think we know more than we know we know.
oh, you definitely do.
I would
You
hope so,
definitely
because
do.
I've gotten this far, but
I can't remember, is anybody in here going to CHLA this summer?
I ain't got one.
Okay,
It's the children's lit conference.
yeah.
I was like,
That, and what students wrote proposals and conference papers last semester in my children's lit class. And so it was a natural for them to submit.
And definitely tell them about applying for travel reimbursements and all that sort
Yeah.
of stuff. If you're not told that's a thing,
yeah.
and who we have to talk to and how to give them the paperwork lead time
knew
because they
about
need
that.
letters and stuff.
Mhm.
Because I know a student in the PhD program who I know who went to a conference last semester and was able to get travel money reimbursed from the department.
Right. Because like, and not even just this department, but a lot of departments, people don't know. Like my boyfriend went to a conference out in San Diego, and thankfully he's got family out there. But I was like, well, he wasn't presenting about like, you need to go to your department and see if they'll cover, you have to present in order to get any kind of coverage. But I was like, he didn't even know that that was an option.
Mhm.
I'm like, well, go to your department and be like, I'm going to such and such conference, in regards to such and such, and see what option there might be. Because sometimes they'll at least help a little bit. And so I know a lot of even undergrads don't really know that's a thing. So,
Okay. All right, very good. So I've got an agenda for next semester already. Excellent. And it's one for everybody. Yeah, I've been working on those non-academic jobs. I've been looking at job ads and seeing where jobs are a possibility.
Did you talk to Dr. Carter? She had us investigate all these sites like Imagine PhD and all that for the professing English.
Yeah,
And that's where you find all the nonprofit jobs that are posted, writing, like English adjacent stuff like writing,
writing.
publishing houses and stuff that are looking for people.
Mhm.
But that's how we found all that. We had to do projects
Mhm.
on alt-ac career paths.
Yeah,
So those are useful. They're free. Some of them are annoying. You have to sign up for them.
Yeah,
Password and
alt-ac.
all.
degree.
Yeah.
Would you send me an email with some of that stuff?
Sure,
Okay,
sure.
thanks. All right, so I seemingly got off track, but I didn't, because that's also research that we're talking about here. So how do I begin my research? Asking the questions. So I want to expand this paper because, I could talk about the problems, the positives of this kind of method pretty easily. What else am I going to need to talk about, though? Well, I want to talk about how it can be a bridge in other applications. So maybe I'll talk about 2 applications, teaching and building bridges between online and face-to-face students in a different, in a non-classroom scenario. Yes.
Building community? Is
Yes.
that what you're talking about?
And what it would be is an extension of building community in the classroom and outside the classroom, I guess. I think that would work. What do you think? Maybe. I'm kind of interested in that. So Abigail, that's what I was saying. Some things there are not any primary sources, but it's still about teaching, and it's still in the, it's a branch off of the subject area that we're talking about. I'm trying to think of other things that this would be the first time I would ever do something that is not literature-based, though. The next thing to do then is to find a source home, a journal, to place it. And then if I could find that journal, there's probably other articles that would help me out on this. But it seems like this is kind of interdisciplinary in some ways. Not interdisciplinary, but not just about teaching literature, but about building a better graduate program. I don't know, something like that.
Maybe something like NCATE, like, because then you're talking about teaching and pedagogy, because that's what this is. So you're using it in English, so maybe something that's attached to them.
Well, and there are lots of journals that do, maybe I should do computers and technology, a journal in that, because there are probably dozens of those. I don't know, do you know how long it's going to take me to research that? Hours. Because I already started researching it today, so we could talk about this today. And it's taken me a great deal of time and a lot of rabbit trails that I followed. But it's also extremely enlightening as to that whole process. And I have to find the so what factor in all of that. What kinds of questions do I want to answer? And behind it all, I know what I want to say. I know what I want to do with this. It's just finding the right outlet for it now. Oh, and writing it.
That final.
And all that research. Okay, so I looked at your bib essays. What you don't know is that the online folks got extra time because I didn't get theirs back until about a week later than yours. So I gave them an extra week to do theirs. So this comes from y'all. And some of the bib essay topic groupings I got were, remember I said that to think about two categories, or one would be fine. Patch writing, ethics, and plagiarism, based on internet sources. Ethics, cultural conflicts, patch writing. Self-plagiarizing, patch writing, pedagogical solutions. Student perspectives and prevention. And this one's the 3 Ps. Perceptions, patch writing, and pedagogy.
Illustration.
So those, I just scanned through them to see what was there. And if it was easy for me to pull it out, I put it up there.
So those are people who use headings.
Which I like.
Yeah.
I am very fond of headings.
No, I did.
They gave me 1, 2,
I wrote it
3,
down to
4.
do it when she said she liked it.
That's at least 4 more words in my word count.
Hey,
What are you talking about?
Make those pages long. Before we go anywhere else, I need to talk about the assignments.
The other Alex.
Just the other Alex.
Hold on. Karen Rogenkamp. Hello?
Let's do that. Yes, no.
I'm teaching.
Yeah.
Did you just ask about this?
Yes.
I'll think, what did they say? Because I've been
Driving
dying.
home?
About what? Not
Possession board books?
Yeah.
I thought that was
She said, I know, I
But
knew that in my
today-
brain,
no.
but she said today, and it was different.
Everybody say hi to Karen.
Hello.
There you
It
go.
was different.
Yeah,
today.
so when she says your discussion,
She's talking to that. I knew that up here.
Yeah, but
Today,
not
here, I didn't know it.
Did you tell her I was picking her up tomorrow?
Oh my gosh, I right?
Okay.
Today,
I'm like, third time.
break up with
But every
headaches.
week, I'm just like, if she's doing it and not telling it, I'm going to get.
Who's funny?
Everybody's having a heart attack because you keep saying your discussion posts, and we're all like, we have missed things.
Every single time you say that.
Because you're talking to everybody, yeah, you know, not
She's
us.
talking to
But
people
like,
who
there's at
dialed
least
in.
4 mini heart attacks that happen every week.
That was Karen. She just was meeting with, she and others were meeting with our second candidate. for the job in rhetoric and composition studies.
The problem I have with this setup that we have over the 3 days is ranking them.
I know.
How do you can't rank the first one straight fives in theory and then have number
I
two.
know.
There's no
But you know why we're doing this, don't you, at this pace?
for
Because
you, because it's probably a nightmare, and for them to schedule it all in one day. I'm referring
No.
to, because they do two separate things. They do a demo and they do a talk,
Right.
and then we're given the opportunity to rank them. And I feel bad for the person going first, because I think everybody knows there's two others. So is this 100 out of 100 when we haven't seen?
normally we would stretch this over 2 weeks. But next week is the C's, and Jess and Shannon,
Will be gone.
the two most important committee members, the two comp rep people, will be gone, the C's. Then the next week is spring break. So we had basically no choice.
He must not have his volume on yet.
We can do it again.
There we go.
How was your meeting, Greg? Guri?
We can't hear you.
I don't think he's talking.
He was.
Oh.
I saw one
Might have been
too.
muttering to himself.
Oh.
He's like, I don't
He
want
said I'm
to.
out.
You're like, I'm out.
Yes, yes.
We got here, they all yelled at me.
He's still there.
No, he's not, that's me. So normally we would take 2 weeks to do this, to go through this process, but they're also getting snapped up very fast by other universities. They're getting, we invited 4 candidates to campus. We did that because we figured at least one would have already accepted a job, and we were correct.
With resumes like those, I'm not surprised.
Yes.
Yeah.
Is comp red like a growing field?
Oh, it's always been a growth field, always.
To hear some people talk about it, it's like the one you should go into if you want a job.
So
But I'm very stubborn and I won't.
I love culture.
Me.
Well, you're gonna have a place in
I
that
enjoyed
too.
it.
It was
Just,
tough,
she really, I almost dropped out and changed my name. Just like, is this what I could do? This is what I could be. Right? She was like, you're almost done. I said, still.
Drop that and change everything. Right. That's when you do your doctoral work.
Nope.
Everybody. Hi, Greg.
Hey.
How was your meeting?
Oh, it was long. I'm tired.
Bet you are. I bet you are. Well, we've had some interesting discussions up to this point. A little bit of everything,
The shocking.
as usual.
All the important stuff.
All the important stuff that you won't get anywhere else.
Yes, ma'am.
All right, so let's see. That's not. No, stop.
This is why you didn't speak.
Oh, anyway, that was Karen, and I was afraid it was an emergency because I have the candidate first thing in the morning. I pick up the
I
candidate.
like how y'all pass them back and forth, like it's an object to hold on to and treasure.
Yep, yep. Everything we do, we escort. Tomorrow, I escort the most. I will be an escort tomorrow.
Wear flat.
Take that how you want it.
No, you gotta wear heels and show the legs.
We're walking around all day.
Okay, 2 things that I want you to know about is we'll talk about briefly the assignment. So we have research presentations. Who else presenting next week? Does anybody know?
I'm on the list.
All right. If you're on the list, be prepared.
Yeah, I know you want to.
I'm on the list, but
Oh, remind me
it's
now. That's
spring break for the kids, and
You're not going to be
when I
here.
signed up, I didn't realize
Then you'll go
I
to the
may need to
next.
do the next.
Yeah. And we can do them
opportunity, if that's
anytime.
okay.
We can do it every week afterwards.
Okay.
We can put in one or one, and then we have this week all for everybody, so.
Yeah, I tried to put mine together in time for this week, but I just couldn't make it happen. I tried.
Okay.
I started, I didn't finish.
I just can't
So
figure
that's the
it
only
out.
thing
I
going
keep
on
staring
this
at my computer.
Well, hold on. Did I not get it in? I didn't. I could have sworn this is the complication that, that I really, that there is no way for me to get through it.
Yes.
No.
Mouse.
Sweet kitty.
This might be
Who's got a
something we
kitty?
can talk about
Oh,
in the other-
Abigail.
That's the web one.
Hey, Dr. Stewart, while you're looking at, I think I'm scheduled to present on the 3rd. Is it okay if I actually go to the university and present there?
Yes, please. We'd love to have you here.
Yes, we get to meet you. That's good.
We promise we won't go to natives.
Where do you live, Greg? Where are you?
I live in Quitman.
Quinlan?
Oh,
Quitman.
Quitman.
that's about an hour from here.
Is that towards Silver Springs?
That's towards Longview.
Okay.
I go through equipment every time I go to Diana.
That's helpful.
Yeah.
All right.
I just know that route very well.
So it's research, presentations, and then on Friday of next week, because your last assignment, the last assignment is going to be a bib essay on a methodology of your choice.
No, damn.
So now you've got to get on it and think about it real hard. So I'd like for you next Friday to identify the methodology you will write about for your final bib essay. And I'm going to talk about that in a minute too. Explain your rationale for choosing this, not rationale, choosing this methodology. It's fine if multiple people write on one methodology. Also identify any problems you foresee at this time. Check to see what's available on the topic before you make a firm decision. You want a topic that provides enough sources, but you also want to be able to narrow it. Thus, feminism would be too broad by about 100 times, maybe 1,000,000. Ecofeminism, however, would likely work. Not all methodologies will be acceptable. For instance, I don't really want to see anything on formalism or structuralism. It's kind of dead. Reader response is far from my favorite. For how the heck can anyone predict how someone is going to respond to a text? That's always been my issue with reader response.
And Jungian archetypes are out.
Exactly. So you could do psychoanalysis or a psychoanalytical approach, but then you need to narrow it down to maybe one type of psychoanalytical. Freud, for instance, although that's going to be huge, or Lacan, or if you were to do, and nobody's going to want to do this, but if you were going to do Lacan, you could narrow it down to his a scholarship that deals with his concept regarding the other, or the mirror stage, or something like that. If you were doing Freud, you could narrow it down to maybe one of those things.
Ego.
Yeah, although that'd be probably, I think I'd want it to go in a different direction.
You want to stay focused on how those kinds of topics relate to English studies, though.
Yeah, it does need to have to do with, not reader response. Where did I put that? I didn't put it. It's supposed to be with English studies. I had written it at some point, but apparently it's gone.
So we do, I know I'm just hopping in here, but so like what you said about feminism and then ecofeminism. So if we did critical race theory, we have to find a branch, like go deeper.
You could focus on, say, the scholarship produced by one or two scholars that are related.
Okay.
So that Richard Delgado, for instance, and Stefanik, I think, are two who do critical race theory. And so you could look at or look at their scholarship specifically, and you'd write your bib essay over their approach to their approach to critical race theory. Does that make sense?
Mm-hmm.
I'm pretty open on this because you're probably gonna run into some challenges. But the reason I want this Friday is so that I can have time, and I know I won't respond to it till Thursday because I'll be out of town for part of that time, and I don't want you to be writing over spring break. So I made that made that decision on your behalf.
So it's due on the 15th?
Yes, on that Friday, anytime.
Just since
Okay,
I'm
so-
next Friday.
Easy.
And explain
So basically we're giving you a proposal.
Kind of. It's not as formal as a proposal. I want to be able to look at it and say, no, this isn't going to work, or yes, but you're going to need to do this.
Okay.
So I'm choosing the methodology, then I'm choosing scholars in their methodology and how they use that lens.
Yes,
Okay.
yes. Because I think it's too big to handle.
Well, that's why
It's gotten way too big.
Yeah.
So methodology and like theory are synonymous? Okay.
Yes, frequently.
Okay, so like, okay, because I got that book that you suggested, and so I should be able to find something in there to
You can,
use
but
as a
you can go
springboard.
way beyond. Remember I said there's white trash theory, working
Literary.
working class studies. There's
I know what white trash is.
I know, I'm like, white trash, that sounds like
white trash working class.
I think I might look that up just because I'm probably fit in.
There are disability studies. Let's see what.
I have heard of disability studies because of that article that I read.
Oh, right, with Colin?
Mm-hmm. I think we were.
Really?
I didn't hate it.
I don't hate is a strong word,
Oh,
but
I didn't hate it, but
I like Pencil, I like Zell, that was my favorite.
that one was pretty good. I liked that thing. I just liked it that we watched movies for class. It was awesome watching Tangled. I mean, I'd already seen it 100 times, but
Well, ours was like an adaptions class. Really?
So no formalism. Marxism, if you wanted to do Marxism, you could do something, for instance, on Althusser. He's my favorite, my fave.
Read some of that, so.
Yeah.
Let's leave it that way.
And feminism, psychoanalytic cultural criticism, which is a form of Marxism. No to structuralism. Archetypal, no. Post-structuralism is really broad, so you might want to do something with deconstruction, but I don't even know if anybody, everything we do is deconstruction. Feminist approaches are deconstructing a text. That a Marxist approach is done through deconstructing, and they're all reader response too.
Isn't the idea, well, I don't know, I'll submit
Go ahead.
proposal, you can-
Biographical, no. Historical, no, but you can do historical Marxism or material historicism, which is a form of Marxism.
Yeah, isn't deconstructionism though, deconstructing a text and kind of deconstructing the theme and showing how a work ends up contradicting itself in
Yes.
ways?
Yes.
I mean, does every do all of these types actually do that with,
Pretty much, because
I didn't think that I thought they were trying to find their own themes. It's like they take it part of the way in deconstructing work, right? Because you're trying to understand its parts and its motivations and
well,
intuitive.
and I've done this before, but maybe not in this class or one that you've been in with me. So I'm going to deconstruct real quickly Eve, and I can associate with Pandora. So the story of Eve is that she and
Adam.
thank you, are
that guy,
that guy.
that one guy.
Literally the one.
The garden. There they are in the garden, and God's told them, "You just do not even go near that tree," which was not the tree of knowledge, but it was a tree of understanding. Something that it's been.
It was a tree of good and evil.
It's the tree of knowledge of good and evil.
Yeah, yeah. And he says, "Don't go there." And so the serpent comes along and says, "Hey, Eve,
Go there.
go there." And Eve is curious. She wants to know. So she goes there and she eats of the fruit, and Adam follows her. And so, she gets blamed for all the bad things that happen from there on out. And she's,
Adam was there. Adam was right there. The story says it. He was right there.
Yeah.
He stood there and said nothing.
but I'm
He could have
deconstructing.
spoke up. But
I'm deconstructing it though.
Okay,
So I'm going to and here's the moment of deconstruction. What if Eve wouldn't have eaten that fruit? Nothing would have happened, right? It would still be the same. Adam and Eve in the garden. We would not be here. So it just overlooks, that story overlooks what Milton called the fortunate fall. I think it was Milton. Because
Sounds about right.
if she wouldn't have eaten that, Milton in Paradise Lost, I think. I could be really wrong.
Sounds like Milton.
If she wouldn't have eaten that fruit, we wouldn't be here. They wouldn't have had children. Now, let's just skip the whole thing about interbreeding, but and we can deconstruct that all we want.
We're all related to each other somehow.
Six layers of separation or something.
Sounds like a delicious thing.
Right.
So that's what I mean by deconstructing. It's there's this big gap that just gets ignored. And until you deconstruct the text and pull back from it and peel back the layers and ask those questions, then it's easy to ignore that stuff. So this is what I just did is what a feminist would do as she deconstructs the text. Yes.
I know a lot of the deconstruction stuff is Derrida. So has like the
Yes.
erasure, is that all deconstruction?
Yes.
If you use parts of
Mm-hmm.
So okay. So it doesn't really stand on its own as a methodology, because you carry a worldview or an angle, as we used to say in journalism.
Well, it didn't
You have your own
used to.
angle when you come at it.
It does now. It didn't used to necessarily. It would just be a matter of finding those gaps. So the story of Bluebeard, when he tells his new wife,
Don't open the door.
don't open I'm giving you the key to this door, but don't open it. And said, I'm going off now. Bye-bye. Be good. And she opens the door, of course. And she finds in there all of his former wives that he killed. It's all full of blood. And then
Because they opened the door. That's
because
why
they
I
opened the door. And then they pull he's a serial killer.
That's my favorite fairy tale.
And so when she pulls the key out, it's got blood all over it, and she can't explain it.
She can't clean it.
She can't clean it. And so the moral to the story is curiosity killed the cat, basically. Who did it kill? Bluebeard, because her brothers come along with their swords and do him in. He was going to kill her. Bluebeard was going to kill her and put her in the room with the other dead women. But he comes along, the brothers come along and save the day. So curiosity did not kill the cat, it killed Bluebeard. So that's a pretty major contradiction. But I can look at that, that's something I would identify because I'm a feminist. That's something I would find. Because I look for how those contradictions happen regarding females. Now, masculinity studies, you can do the same thing. So you can ask about how, if we talk about males being, if we talk about our gender roles as being constructed and culturally learned, then when we read a novel from an earlier period and the men are having to go off to war, man, that sucks. Why? It's always the men who have to go off to war. And of course, women went to war too, and everything from the Revolutionary War forward, as far as I know. But it's a matter of looking at it. And it looks what feminism sometimes says: the guys got it all, they got it made. Masculinity studies says, no. Look at what's happening here. About what's that? Like getting your stuff cut off. Emasculating.
Emasculated, yes.
Of being emasculated, about cultural norms being shifted, and then what are these men left with to do? Maybe that's why there's so much violence, is because they don't know what to do now, and so they turn that turmoil outside onto other people. So they're different forms for a whole bunch. How's that sounding?
So there's some on the definite no list, is what I'm hearing.
Yes. The stuff that's...
And deconstructionism can blend with any number of these.
Yes.
Deconstructionism doesn't really stand on its own as a methodology.
Not anymore. Yeah, not anymore.
But everything else.
She'll tell you.
I'll tell you. That's the purpose of it.
No.
Well, I want to make sure I do enough research to understand one that I'm going to connect with, right? So,
exactly. But you don't have that much time. You only have till next Friday. But I thought I better get you started on this before spring break.
Much appreciated.
And that way you can be thinking about it. So your job is to look through it, make sure that there's scholarship on it, not too much, not too little. Narrow it, broaden it.
So you just need about a paragraph or something.
Yeah,
So
it can be bullet points. You can make it into bullet points.
Okay.
I want bullet points because it's really easy for me to open it up and see, okay.
So headers and bullet points are favorites. Got you.
Mm-hmm.
Anything that makes it easy to give for you to give us a name. That's what you said.
Easy button.
At the beginning of the semester. Button A.
Listen to the little things.
Yeah. I've taken so much time on so many things today. Oh my gosh, it's already 9 o'clock.
Oh, it's bedtime.
I know.
It was bedtime when we got here.
Since we're at a slight pausing point, any idea when that schedule's gonna be posted? The schedule of classes?
I don't.
Dang.
I don't. And right now, and it's going to be wrong.
Naturally.
Because it's always wrong when it first goes up.
the schedule for summer? Is that what
For
you're
everything.
looking
For
the next
summer and for fall, or May mini, summer 1, summer 2, and fall. And August, I think.
Yeah, and the August mini too.
The rest of the year.
Mhm.
The rest of you?
Yeah, pretty much.
What they listen?
Yeah, but I don't know when it is. I know how to look at it, but I can't tell you that.
No, I couldn't even see the temporary view when I tried to pull it up the other day.
Oh, no, I know how to look at it. I know how to get to it, but
Oh, I'm
You
sure.
should
It's a
tell us
secret.
what
That's
classes
all
are
right.
gonna be
It's a secret.
available ahead of time.
I would, but it's wrong.
Oh, dang.
Even when it's official, it's wrong.
Some of the classes that are listed aren't offered, so I can't really do that.
I got a very small list today from Dr. Rodenkamp of what's coming up
Okay.
to start thinking about.
Oh,
So if that's any indication that it's coming soon.
It should be coming soon.
Because I had to check in because it'll be the second year, so I had to make sure I knew what I was doing.
Mm-hmm.
I had an idea. That was pretty cool.
Good. Some of you will be taking 595. And I'm working on yours. It's just that I have to match up the courses from the other university to our courses in education and budget areas that I'm not familiar with. So it takes a long time to sort through that. So, but I'm working on it.
Thank you.
So you're going to be ready for 595 in the fall? Yes? No? Yes? No?
Is that the thesis or the?
That's the
No,
595, 518 is the thesis. And you might do a thesis anyway. So.
I might.
Do it.
No, Dr. Reed said,
Yeah.
if I'm not gonna go for a PhD, it didn't really make much of a difference in the grand scheme of things. Too late. We'll see, man.
I'm waiting to see if I want to do
I need to settle on the topic.
Come on.
And then I'm going to go over the final project briefly. We have so much to catch up on.
Sweet, there's a list. I love lists. There's no bullet points on those though.
So wait, we can do the method as well?
That's method.
No, I think I'm just reminding you. Let's see what it says. Bibliographic essay on methods and methodologies. Oh, I think I did that because they cross over sometimes. Find 10 scholarly articles that use a particular method, for instance, archival, digital, textual, and then 350 words for each article, and as organically as possible, identify these things. The assignment isn't complete. Because it doesn't say anything about the methodologies. Oh, okay, and then the methodology approach the author takes in each article. I think I need to redo this.
So,
What I want you to right now focus on is the methodology that you want to use, and I'm going to revise that.
Okay, so this proposal abstract thingy that you have us doing for this next week, is it going towards the annotated bib and the bibliographic essay?
Yeah. There's not an annotated bib, is there?
Yes.
there is.
Oh, okay.
Because that's
That's what you just read. It's a 10-source annotated bibliography of 350 words per.
So it's not a bib essay.
Well,
But
then
it's not
but
about
it's our
bib
bid
essay.
into it.
The very top says bib essay.
But that's our very last assignment. That's the thing that's due
Yeah,
at the end of all things.
at the end of all things.
That's whatever, Mount Doom.
Oh, there is one. Okay.
Proto turns in assessment.
That's right.
just throw a ring. Just throw a ring.
Dude,
in
if
the
I was
classroom.
there, I would have like nudged it done. Gotta carry you up. Just like I had to turn on me.
And I see what you're saying now, Shay, about it's listed in 2 places, but
Yeah.
it's due 4/16 there.
Yeah,
and
but
there
then
it's
you've
due
got the
5/6.
annotated- When you click on that, it still
Yeah,
brings
it's-
up the annotated information.
Yeah, that's my problem, I think.
And also on the syllabus, it has that final assignment due on April 28th, not May 6th.
And I think I changed that to as late as possible for y'all.
Cool. Well, no, because I saw that and I was like, woo, that's
She's
early.
She's like, it's a day in April. I'm like, no, it's May. So we were actually looking at everything before you came in.
It'll be due finals week, but I'm Wednesday probably finals week.
That's perfect. So, like I was asking,
This, what we're turning in next week goes towards both these assignments, or is it just for the bibliographic essay?
It'll be for the bibliographic essay because
Okay.
that will be dealing
So then the
with method.
annotated bib will be a
methodologies.
completely different monster to this one.
it should be a lead up to our.
It'll be a lead up.
Okay.
I scaffold.
All right.
Yay for scaffolding.
Right.
No, mm-mm.
So, are we to the point where we can talk about the pain that we endured writing this bibliographic essay?
Are we too?
Yeah.
Speaking of the
everyone
scaffold,
all-
I'll just say, I didn't do myself any favors. And I had to do a lot of research in order to write a meaningful, or somewhat meaningful, I guess that's up to you to decide. Bibliographic
Plant the
essay.
seeds, plant the seeds.
I ended up, I had to find a number of different resources other than the ones that I found for the bibliography.
Right.
So I think-
I had wanted everybody to limit themselves on,
You were right. Yeah, so I saw your comment and I was like, yes, that's what's happening to me right now.
uh-huh.
The research that I did, the bibliography I compiled, number one, a lot of the things I got dinged on because they were too short.
Oh, I need to explain that.
But also the field of, the scope of the bibliographic entries that I chose was so broad that I had to basically kind of rethink the whole thing. I won't do any spoilers because it's kind of part of what I wanted to talk about in my research presentation
Oh, okay.
on how
great. Yeah.
how I did kind of had to correct the direction that I had gone.
Uh-huh.
Yeah, I had to redo at least half of my research and then pick through those to see which of those fit my
Mhm.
my topic and theme best.
What other pain did you have?
Well, you emailed me and was like, those headings, not really feeling them. I was like,
Did it,
okay.
did it make sense as to why? Yeah.
So like, I kind of went with the ones that were succinct, that you knew exactly what I was going to be talking about. You knew exactly what the articles were going to be
That's what
talking
I
about.
want.
Yeah.
That's what I want. And in terms, I probably won't get to it because we have so much. But I've gotten the question more than once. Oh, it's supposed to be more than 5 pages. It's supposed to be at least 7 pages. How much depth do you think you can get in a 5-page article? 0. Now, in some areas that works just fine because what they do is they just list all their sources in parentheses, and so mentioning those draws them in, and it's up to the reader basically to, they'll give 1 sentence and they'll have 5 sources after that as to, who all has said this. And so they're eliminating a lot of that review of the scholarship. That's how they do their review of the scholarship. And so those articles are going to be shorter, but in literature and composition studies, no, they're not. I've never written one that's less than 20 pages, an article. And that's what you're going to find mostly. And that's because the article has to have depth. It has to show that it's been researched, that all, the person's done the research to get to the place to write this. So that's why I keep saying, no, I don't want these short ones. It needs to be able to, there's not enough time to really truly develop, like lit people do and composition and rep people do, to develop an argument.
My number one struggle with this was I felt like, because I included patch writing, I felt like patch writing was a little bit easier to write because most of the article, we had a very defined thing with patch writing, like find the definition, put them in conversation with each other, find the expert. And so my focus was laser focus, right? And I know that the subheadings and subtitles were supposed to laser us in, but at the same time, I felt like the articles that I had, the whole article was about my subtopic. So it was no longer about a page or 2 of the article. It was the entire article, which was at least 10 pages long, if not longer. And so trying to wrap my mind around how to condense this much information down to here and put it in conversation with everything else, that was my struggle. Like,
The struggle is real.
it was so real. And so, because I was looking at my patch writing assignment, and I'm like, man, I was on point. But at the same time, I was also like, if I keep the rest of these to about 125 words, which is what each of the patch writing ones had to be in order to have it under 500 words, like, then I would, even with 15 sources, I wouldn't have enough words to fill the space unless I extended them a little bit. So mine was just navigating and like tweezing out and then stretching what I had. It felt like there were a lot of different processes that were going on all at once.
True.
And so that was my struggle, because I like laser focus. That's my bread and butter. So, but having multiple different things that need to interact all in the same place, that was a little bit tougher than I anticipated.
I didn't have as much trouble with the actual writing of it. Like, once I finally sat and was doing it, it seemed to come out pretty smoothly. My biggest problem, I guess, was just I've got to stop telling myself that I can do it tomorrow.
Yeah, there is that.
Yeah, I gotta start doing it today.
I had to use that slow and low to kind of see, because it was still difficult for me to understand what a bibliographic essay should look like. And so I really referenced that one a lot. Like, I reread that to kind of see, how did these sources talk? Like, how did she include, because it was a lot, you know, how did she include so many? And I think that was really helpful for me. And I just knew that I was going to use that patch writing. I included it in my initial word count. I was like, okay, really only I write 2,500 words. And I didn't use it. You know?
That's great.
And I was so angry with myself, because when I first sat down, that was what I first put. I was like, yeah, patch writing. I'm gonna figure out a way to put this one in there. I was like, that's easy. But I didn't even use it. And it kind of let me, but that patch writing assignment did help me, I guess, kind of figure out how to put my sources together, you know, that it's easier for your sources to talk than to not, you know. Right. And I didn't know that until really, I didn't know that you naturally do that. Like, you're naturally connecting these ideas. But when we write, we may not always do that, because we're not looking at them together. We're looking at them separately. So I think that was a easier part, I guess, for me, is I wanted it to be short, because I was like, yeah, 3,000, that's my number. And if given the time, I think that even with just 12 to 15 sources, that paper would have been longer. And just analyzing them. So it was, by the end of it, you know, because when I started it, I was, but by the end of it, I said, okay, I see, you know, I can write that, you know, this, I can't argue this. I can see what the writer is saying, and I don't have to be included, you know. And I think that's really why I was looking at slow and low. It's because she was included. Her argument was implied, and learning that was, I was just like, it wasn't that bad.
You know, I think, I don't want to get too mystical here, but I think this kind of the cool part about writing this paper, and I'm with you, Shay. I should never have told myself I'm going to start working on this tomorrow.
I mean, every day.
Because I had a couple of very, very long, arduous days writing this. But one of the cool things was just what you're saying, is the way that it actually, once I had an argument, the way in analyzing all of the sources, how they kind of wove themselves together into, I mean, I guess sometimes it probably doesn't work that way, but more often than not, I think once you've zeroed in on the types of research that you need in order to support your argument and to cover the topics that you want to cover, they do, I mean, because I reread those articles repeatedly, like for each section of my, which was what took me so long, but for each section of my paper, for my topics in my outline, because I'd go back, create an outline. For each topic in my outline, I reread those articles, not at a level of detail as I did each time, but I would scan back through them and find, okay, here's my place, and I would highlight in my PDFs and say, okay, here are my highlights for this section. It all kind of came together reasonably well. Again, I guess that's for you to decide. That
No one died.
it was kind of difficult, right? No one died.
At least not that I'm admitting to.
It's interesting that y'all talk about the articles weaving together, because by the time I was reading the last article, they were citing other articles, and I was like, hey, I just read that one. I just read that one.
Yeah,
Exactly.
yeah, it's kind of it becomes a web, if you,
Well, that's
in a
what
way,
Roman
you
talked
kinda-
about.
When you begin to feel like, okay, I might be doing this right? Because these folks who are professionals and have done this for a while, they're actually, these are the dots that they're connecting to. So, you don't want to, repeat any of their research necessarily, but you see that all of the stars aligned
Mhm.
in that way for those researchers as well. So it's kind of a
I like
nice thing.
what Alicia was saying about looking back at slow and low, because I looked back at the other bibliographic essays that I had picked out for one of the first assignments, saying, okay, like, how did they do this? How am I doing this? Like, this guy managed to like crunch 50 pages into that little bitty tiny paragraph. So what can I, like, using the same strategies, like actually legitimately using it as a mentor text, like we try to teach our kids to do, was doing that for my own.
Yeah, that's why.
Yeah, that was so helpful. If we wouldn't have had those, like, I would have been in a bigger mess than I was.
You were going to say something, Brian, I think, a while back.
I guess similar, because the patch writing assignment, mine was just one definition.
Mm-hmm.
And to use that, I used it as a bridge between two sections, right? It was perceptions of the problem. But just in the way they landed, there was an expert before Howard, but it seems like since Howard, even in pedagogy, even in my other section, she was all over that. Prior to her, there was one work from like 97. It was like Ashford, Bannister, and Thorne. It sounded like a law firm, 3 of them. That everybody cited. Like, that was the text on plagiarism before Howard. And since Howard, even in teaching, right, it's just been Howard since then. So that was kind of my end piece. Like, the discussion at the end was kind of like, this is just since Howard showed up. Like, it's not just with the invention of patch writing, but the whole way we talk about it, the whole way we teach
She
it.
reshaped everything.
Absolutely. In one. So that was the one thing that I came out of there thinking, oh, it's all right. No,
Man, that
person
one
can have
article
it.
turned everything around. How would you like to be that person that turns everything around?
Yeah.
I would love it.
Don't you? And I really, honestly, anytime, and I think that's the only reason I'm still in school is because of that. Like, that hope that I can find something new, and be the one, it really keep me going. And that really, if it don't happen, just know I blame all of you.
Now what I'm really serious about, the length of the articles. In other things, you can get away with it, but not in this class. In this class, I demand a higher standard, the highest standard, because don't you want to learn that highest standard? Not only that, I know every single one of you can reach it. I know that for a fact.
I'm glad you know that, because I'm still working on it.
I do know it. I have all the confidence.
That was definitely the hardest paper I've ever written
It's
in all of the
definitely
years. My years in college. Maybe probably you guys who are on your PhD, that was maybe not.
No, it's
Paper I wrote for
this
this
is-
class.
And this is one of the hardest classes you're ever going to take.
I didn't find it hard in so much that it was something that I felt like I couldn't do. I felt that it was challenging, because it was something that I had not done before.
Right.
So I wasn't familiar with the form up until like basically this semester. And so it was kind of a new
The genre.
discovery. Yeah.
It's a genre.
Yeah, me too. It was not some, I mean, my druthers,
I managed to make the 3,000 word count without
for a living,
having
right?
to fill it in. I was very proud of myself.
So-
Sorry.
Go ahead.
If it weren't for the review of literature analysis, like the analogy, I don't think I'd be able to write reviews at all. Because I want to argue with it. I want to read it. I want to say, no, I don't think that's right. But that's not what we're doing.
Right.
We are
It's not
saying what
just-
they said. And if we want to make them fight, we got to put the articles
We gotta
together.
take
They
it
have
like
to do it with
dolls
each
and-
other. It can't be what we think about
Well,
it. So
this
that's
person thinks this.
pulling that back was the hardest part.
Yeah, and that's where your dissertation comes in.
Yeah. Yeah, but we didn't get to the part where it's like we had to stop. I couldn't make them fight like little toy.
Puppets.
Yeah.
It's like play therapy.
Redrum.
The Shining, just in case you didn't get that reference. All right, so what I will be doing is getting this, I must have been really tired when, well, that would not be a surprise, when I got down to week, starting with week 12, because putting these things together is so, a full syllabus together, a full schedule is so challenging sometimes. And especially since I remade the whole thing. It is nowhere similar to anything I've ever taught. And I think I did, I think that's good.
Really enjoyed it.
Good, I'm glad.
Enjoy is a strong word.
I've learned a lot. It has stretched me
learning a lot
considerably.
is definitely
There's been
the goal.
growth.
So I will make that final project clearer, and I'll look over it all, and I'll probably be doing that over spring break. Or maybe next week. Maybe next week. I'd like to get a lot done next week. I'd like to get all my grading done next week.
But
I'm crazy.
For next Friday, Dr. Stewart, we still need to journey in that methodology. Okay.
Yes, yes.
And-
I want you to get started, because your final project will deal with methodology.
and
Because
we're just emailing you some
it's a
bullets.
discussion board.
Gotcha. Okay.
It's a discussion board.
Are we gonna
Ours gonna
respond
be
to
on
other
a discussion board too?
Mhm. Do what?
Are we gonna respond to other people? Or like, it's just gonna be there and people can look at it or not?
Yep.
Okay.
And I'm gonna be responding to it.
So you're not allowed to tell me how stupid I am.
Well, she said I didn't have to tell you, so
I
I'm
know, I said
good.
you're not allowed.
I never told people they were stupid
No, but you implied it.
I'm not replying.
by not replying.
Very loud.
My face, like, it'll tell you. It'll tell you.
Okay, so here's Alex, the other Alex. This is what he writes. And this is something that y'all need to know. I don't know what happened with his process, but I was recently researching ideas of cybersecurity for a cybersecurity side project, and found a paper titled "An Effective Deployment Algorithm via Search Economics" that seemed useful. I searched everywhere on the internet, but was only able to find it through this website for $35.95. Needless to say, I was disappointed. Then I remembered that Google does not always index document titles, so I decided to do the following. Read the abstract. Copy a unique looking sentence from the abstract. And I do this all the time to find articles. As far as the trick goes, less is more. I chose, quote, "The main distinguishing feature of the SE are twofold." Yes, that's going to be a relatively unique thing. Next, I typed the following string in Google, including the quotation marks. And there it is. Lo and behold, there it was. The PDF was there. He didn't have to go to the website to pay for it.
Abstract is one of the, one of the databases that we have access to.
Yeah, Alex, I don't know what happened that you couldn't actually access it through the databases, because I found it.
Might not have been signed in through the proxy.
Well,
Although he seems,
But it.
Maybe
he's
just Googled
in the
it.
Well, if he
database,
just
though.
Googled it,
yeah, it's not gonna,
Googled it.
everything isn't gonna show up that way.
so what he needed to do is go into the TAMUC
Yes.
system and then go for it. Because if you
Yes.
just Googled it and found it on Google,
Now, if you're on campus, you can do that because, and logged in. Because when I was in my office, I did that very thing.
I wouldn't have known that you can search like that, though.
That's a very interesting point.
Oh, yeah, I do it all the time. And in fact, that's how I find plagiarism.
Oh, crap.
Well, yeah, if the kid uses something and I'm like, that's what I do.
How often?
Not what understudy means.
Can't we? Yeah, let me search it, and then I'll find the exact. So it's interesting.
Sometimes kids can be smart.
And so there it is. Is that right? An effective WSN deployment.
Oh, it's.
Now told me what that meant.
And you can see the words.
It's a cyber security, so it's like a computer thing, I'm sure.
And it showed that, oh yeah, that's right. And so I took that same title and I went to the library. Now watch it not work. No, that's right. That's right. What did I find? Oh,
Here we get back in this window, put in the back arrow.
cooperate, please. Thank you. And there it is. So you should have, Alex, you should have been able to access it through the library databases, as long as you were signed in.
Well, like if you sign in via your MyLeo, like and go to the library page that way, sometimes like even after I put this in and it'll pull it up, but in order to access the actual article, I have to go up to the top because it says, "Are you off campus? Sign in again." And I'm like, "Oh, okay." So I have to sign it up there, then go back, search it one more time, and then it'll pull up.
So that's why I go directly to the library database. I don't go through my Leo. I just have the library bookmarks.
And that's how I do it too.
And they're known to do it the other way. So
Yeah, on the TAUC homepage, there's a link for G Library.
Just want to tell you, /library.
Okay, so do the copy thing, and like I said, that's how I find plagiarism. If a freshman pops up with a sentence that is really complex and lovely, and the rest of it isn't.
There are random moments of brilliance.
My question, okay, so lo and behold, there it was, the PDF document I was looking for. The first and only Google result had the entire paper for free. Now that URL does not necessarily scream legitimate, so I decided to check out the main domain and was taken to a web page where all the content is written in Arabic, though I wouldn't know for sure. My question, and this may be a complicated one, yes, it is. When searching for a journal article online, what is the responsibility of the student as far as verifying the validity of the source? It is absolutely your responsibility. And that source is completely valid because that's what I found out by going into the library databases. I saw that it was what, Elsevier? Was that the
It's
Science
spam.
Direct, right?
Yeah.
That's the database.
Yeah, but she's talking about the author.
The publisher.
Yeah, Elsevier. It is positively reliable. So text me or I mean, not text me, but email me or make a comment someplace at some point, Alex, to tell me what's going on with your search that it didn't, that you couldn't do it through the library. We may have to do something else. But it's your responsibility. I don't mean the publisher, but the actual web page where the paper was coming from.
Right, so like the website that he found the full PDF on, looks hinky, but would it still then be valid because the paper?
Yeah, what somebody's done is uploaded it to a website.
It's like whenever I was trying to find the original Howard piece from '92.
Exactly.
It wasn't in the school database,
But it was available on a PDF.
Right. And so I had the original information about where it was published, but then I also had the random PDF,
website.
so that's the conundrum.
Yeah. And you asked me about that. So yes, and you can tell sometimes by the format, by the way it looks in print, with page numbers and that it might have at the bottom, the way the headers are situated and the page numbers are situated and stuff like that. Now, he continues, in my opinion, unless the writer is being paid, their work should be freely accessible to everyone. In fact, I personally would prefer that my own research is available to anyone who is curious whenever possible. Case in point, I wrote 2 conference papers that were published in 2015 and 2016. I recently decided to see if I could find them online, so I typed my name in Google Scholar. I found my papers were available via paid subscription from ProQuest. A lot of people in computer science write worse than I, so please don't judge if you glance at them. I had no idea that my papers were sequestered by some online company that collects knowledge. I also know that there were websites where I can find my papers for free, and I am more than okay with that. However, I also like to avoid getting in trouble, so I would like to know if there is guidance in regard to locating research papers online from non-official sources. Well, kind of. You do have to do the research. If something looks hinky, if it's written in Courier, double-spaced, Courier's the old typewriter looking stuff, and double-spaced, and it's probably there are probably going to be some problems with it. But what you have to do is you have to track down the actual source from whence it comes and look at that source, see, and I'm talking about the original source of it. So you could use that Arabic site for the article. I don't know if I think it would have all the information available for the citation, so you would know where it was coming from. So I think that's the case. He continues, some may be familiar. And I do need to speak to about the payment and such. So in the sciences, they have to pay money to have their stuff published. And they don't get paid for it.
They pay to have their work
They pay to
published?
have it. It goes through all the same peer review processes, but they pay a lot of money sometimes. And if the university doesn't make that payment, they're stuck. I mean, think about it. Trying to get tenure and having to pay for articles to be published. Yeah, journals will charge.
That's insane.
That doesn't happen in the humanities, because humanities have a very different approach to things. But
That works in my mind, but
there is such a thing as open source that you can get a lot of your text. But in terms of these different databases that hold materials, they have to make money some way in order to employ the people to put those in place where they are available. And it has to be, I mean, until there's a better way to do it, somebody's got to foot the bill for putting it all together, for maintaining, for database maintenance, for indexing, for all of those different, it's so complicated to get things indexed and distributed. Somebody has to pay for that. And they do it through charging subscriptions to databases like JSTOR. I can't imagine how much JSTOR costs, or not JSTOR, but Project Muse, because it is one of the most, it's one of the biggest databases there is. So that's in response to one, to some of that comment about freely accessible. In an ideal world, yeah, they would be freely accessible. But then you have to think about who puts the journal together, how do they make sure that it's available, do the mailing, do the putting it up in a database and all of that. It's much more complicated. Yes.
Just to reinforce what you said, after I went to a conference and presented a paper, I started getting emails about offers for publication that wanted money. And the first thing I was told by my department was, in our discipline, you get paid or it's nothing. There's no money training. So if you're in the if you're an English major and you go present a paper and you start getting emails, we want to publish your paper, that's a scam. Don't even answer them.
There's a term for that.
Is
It's
it?
called predatory.
Predatory presses.
Yes.
Really?
Yeah,
Yes.
it was, it's been pretty bad in the last.
Yeah, this was like, what was this, two years ago? Something like that. And they just came out of the woodwork. They knew the name of the title. They had the right conference I was at. The title of the paper was right, and they wanted money.
Yeah.
And I said, this doesn't sound right. He said, no, it's not right. Like, we don't.
Right.
But apparently the science does, so that's what reminded me.
Yeah. And I only vaguely know about this because I heard somebody from the sciences talking about how, it's hard for us to get travel funding to go to a conference, let alone pay $1,000 or however much they charge to publish an article. But it's on the up and up in those situations. I'll see if I can find out more information on that.
I would never get published.
So some may be familiar with Aaron's, is it Swartz, I suppose, who was arrested by MIT for downloading hundreds of papers directly from JSTOR database and who committed suicide soon after being charged with computer fraud and facing up to 35 years in prison. For those interested, there's a documentary about him available on Amazon that addresses that topic as well. I'm going to show you the trailer in a moment, and then I'm going to take you to a website that has something to say about it. Yeah. So this is not in relationship to plagiarism, but it is in relationship to how we handle access to scholarship. So here's the trailer to the film.
It's easy sometimes to feel like you're powerless, like when you come out in the streets and you march and you yell and nobody hears you. But I'm here to tell you today, you are powerful. You can stop this bill.
A co-founder of the social news and entertainment website Reddit has been found dead.
Aaron learned how to learn at a very young age.
Bob introduced him to computers, and he just took off.
He certainly was a prodigy, although he never kind of thought of himself like that.
He really had different aspirations for the purposes of political goals.
He was sort of learning to hack politics.
Stop soapbox!
This bill poses a serious threat for all who use the internet.
The freedoms our country had been built on would be suddenly deleted. I couldn't let that happen.
And Aaron was trying to make the world work. He was trying to fix it.
Bringing public access to the public domain.
He doesn't hack JSTOR in the traditional sense of hacking.
He wasn't stealing, he was making a point. They arrested him, strip searched him, and left him in solitary confinement.
He said, "We want to make an example out of me."
On the internet, everybody has a license to speak. It's a question of who gets heard.
Aaron Swartz was not a criminal.
You can say, oh, this is another instance of cyber war. The cyber criminals are attacking us again. They use those as excuses to push through more and more dangerous laws.
This is a poor use of prosecutorial discretion. Should have never gotten the attention of the criminal system.
We need to galvanize opposition today because today is when it matters.
I'm still angry. This is what we as a people think is okay.
Aaron was willing to put himself at risk for the causes that he believed in.
He was the internet's own boy, and the old world killed him.
Hello, Valerie here. Now, just as quickly as David Fincher bowed out of the Steve Jobs biopic, Sony are now in talks with Danny Boyle to direct. Rumors are also circling that the filmmaker has...
And then here's more information on it. Remembering Aaron Swartz and his influence on reforming criminal justice. So there's an article here on it if you want to read about it and what he did and what Forbes has to say about it. And that's available on the PowerPoint that you have access to. Thomas, Alex also made mention of how the same sentences were written to death. Do you remember that about how, when Alex was talking about how he kept rewriting, saying the same thing over and over again until finally he produced it? Immediately I thought, several of my students who do the same. I think it is part of the learning process in writing. Jill mentioned a teacher with rigorous expectations for his students. I love hearing about teachers that still hold that high standard. In my environment, teachers that have higher expectations are few and far between. I try to raise the bar. And let me say, I have found that almost wherever I set the bar, students will find that bar. They'll be around it. They might rise above it. They might be a little below it. They might be right on top of it, but they get there. If you set a low bar, that's what you're going to get. Maybe that's naive on my part that I have that much confidence, but generally I know I'm quite aware of what you can do. I find that out within about 2 weeks of class. And I know that you all can do this. I try to raise the bar, but I've learned I have to raise it gradually. Otherwise, my students shut down because they have expectation for easy classes or free passes. Yeah. But I wanted that to include that because I wanted to say something about setting the bar. Emily, I have actually been called into the office by my sales team where she works. Sales team leader to read her emails before she sends them out so I can check for grammar and spelling. Basic sentence structure, grammar, and citation seems to be something that school districts and even some college classes do not cover. I'm not sure if it is because I feel that students already know, but this is my one sentence statement. Who, what, or is anyone to blame for students lacking so significantly in this area of English studies?
TEA.
Do what?
I said TEA. It's just not a focal point in secondary. It's not a focal point.
Should it be?
Yeah, I mean, because it would.
Sometimes writing is the only impression people get of you, so I think it is very important.
Yeah, I do too.
And I have my own personal diatribe about why I think that grammar and whatnot, basic sentence structure skills are lacking. But the short and sweet of it is I think it's because we're teaching whole language. We're getting away from the rote memorization. Like, this is a subject, this is a verb. You must have both of them.
Diagrams,
Without a subordinating conjunction in front of it in order to have a complete sentence. Like, you say anything even remotely close to that subject verb, and freshmen are like, what's that? I don't even, like, and so you have to go all the way back to the basics because they don't even know what a subject and verb are. So how do you teach them independent clauses and dependent clauses and all this other business if they can't even identify a subject and verb?
Mm-hmm.
And it's rampant. And the kids also don't read, and so they haven't had it modeled for them. Mm-hmm. What all that they have seen modeled is on their phone and text,
TTYL.
on billboards or street signs that think they're being punny and cute, but they're really just contributing to the moral degradation of society. I'm just saying. I told you, I have a soapbox. You really don't want me on it, but like that's just my very own personal short opinion.
Greg, do you have any thoughts on that, on what Emily had to say, that her question?
I'm not quite sure what the question was, but I know she was talking about the dependent clauses, the subject verb stuff.
Well, the question was, who, what, or is anyone to blame for students lacking so significantly in this area of English studies, as in basic writing skills?
I would say it is a culmination of a lot of things, in my opinion. Of course, I used to teach English. Now as a superintendent, so I think I've got a good perspective all the way around.
And that's exactly why I'm asking you.
I think that it has a lot to do with one, your state expectations on what they accept and where their focus is. Two, I think it has a lot to do with parental expectations or lack of support. And three, I think that the teachers themselves paint themselves in a hole when they lower their standards, and it's hard for you to keep your standards high in a public school when your colleague is you have a high failure rate because you're holding your own, but your colleague is passing all this through with little or no resistance. And so you're getting in trouble for high failure rates while the other teachers are heroes because all their kids are passing. So I think that just the standards within the school itself poses an issue because we undoubtedly water down our own expectations just trying to be friendly to the kids. And so I think it's an inner problem within the profession itself.
Amen.
I don't disagree with any of that, but I also feel like there's increasingly a move at our level to get away from traditional writing and taking alternate submissions, right, video versus written. I had a student last semester, his writing skills were not great, but he was a dynamic and coherent speaker, and he gave me video essays, and I graded it differently than I would have a written essay. So to teach a class where I focused on written would have left him out entirely. Mm-hmm. Might have improved his basic writing, but I never would have seen how great he was at verbal communication. So it's kind of like I can't punish him for playing to his strengths when there's a curriculum that encourages that.
Mm-hmm. Well, and that's the general feeling in the high school anyway. Like high school English teachers have like 5 different strands. Some of them are listening, speaking, research, writing, and reading, like all of those. And we're encouraged and pushed towards technology and giving the kids other outlets besides just writing or reading. Like have them create those videos, have them do this, that, and the other. And which is fine and dandy, except for the fact that now they don't get to practice the skills that they're going to need.
Mm-hmm. I think like when I think about things, I think about the progression of everyone wants to, and I don't disagree with anything that you're saying. I think that we're not, our kids aren't as prepared as what they once were, and I think that's just a lot of societal issues that go with that. But I also think that when you're in the middle school, it's the elementary fault for not preparing the and when you're in the high school, it's the junior high's fault, and when you're in the college, the high schools didn't prepare the kids right. And I think that really the bottom line is when you take away the top 10% kids that are going to be successful no matter what, when you look at the rest of the school, bottom line is this is what we have, and we just have to, if this is important for us to teach, we just have to buckle up, roll up our sleeves, and get it taught.
Yeah, I wonder too if the whole system hasn't lost sight of the prize.
I think
because I'm sorry, Greg, what'd you say?
I agree with you. I think maybe it has.
Yes, and the prize to me is to have literate in traditional ways, because that's how our students are going to either move to a job or move into college, and as well to be non-traditional in their abilities. So it has to be both, but I think what happens along the way is the goal is not to do that, but to get the test scores up, and the whole business about producing a complete human being, educated human being, gets lost because somebody along the way seems to think that test is going to be that it will take care of that individual as a human being, a whole human intellectual.
That's what happens when you have the legislature who are not educators making decisions for educators. So they put that test out there, and if you don't, like for administration purposes, from when I look at my principals, if they don't get their scores fixed, the state's going to come in and take us over. So you have to focus on the test, even though you don't want it and you don't think that that's the thing to do, but you have to. You know, the state forces you to be prepared for the test instead of being prepared for the things that really colleges need to be prepared for, need the kids to be ready to be prepared. It's just very frustrating.
It makes me crazy. Yeah, it makes me crazy. Okay, is it time?
So we're ending on a high note then.
Yeah, let's end on that high note. All right, so it's presentations, and whatever time we have left over, which I doubt is any, we'll return to this one, this discussion board, and the next. I'm going to say I want everybody online to definitely watch, but I'm not going to have you post to a discussion board because I have the rest of this one and the one from Dr. Reed's to catch up with. So for talking about it in class. So hold your tootsies and don't post a response to that lecture for this week. Okay?
When you say you want that post about the our topic,
yes,
for the next,
I do want that one.
Essay, I'm going to be traveling, so I was wondering what time on Friday.
I don't care.
Friday before midnight.
Saturday before I get up and I mean, you can take, if you want to, you can take until Wednesday. I just wanted it to, because I doubt that I'll be looking at it. I might. I figured out a way to tether my computer to my phone in the land of Granby, Missouri, where my mom and dad don't have internet.
You create your own hotspot.
I do. I do that. So, I mean, I don't care. That's not going to affect me. I just didn't want you all to have to deal with it. So.
Right. Well, I mean, I'll be probably catching up on stuff when the week that everybody else is on spring break, since the kids are on spring
I'll
break.
be doing the
next
same
week.
thing.
Yeah.
If I could submit by next Wednesday, that would actually be better for you, because then I'd be home and have some time. Get
Right. But no discussion board online, folks. Okay?
awesome.
Thank you all. It's been a pleasure. I'll get everything as fixed up as I can and as quickly as I can. Okay?
All right.
All right. Night.
Night.
Bye.